You are listening to the Optic Blast Broadcast, a hipster goblin media production.
Previously on Optic Blast Broadcast, the broadcast dudes teamed up with the Nerdy Reads podcast to tackle X-Men 97 for a season review. They discussed their favorite mutants, action figures, and reviewed the entire season. So if you haven't caught up, head back to episode 4. Now, it's time for episode 5. This episode, we grab our billy club and do a swan dive off the rooftops of Hell's Kitchen and descend into the epic adventure that some say is the greatest Daredevil story ever told. Daredevil, Born Again. We're going to discuss the 2003 Daredevil movie, yes, the Affleck movie, the Netflix series, and much more. As always, I'm one of your hosts, I am Lockman, and I'm joined by my partner, Mr. Dylan Murdock.
Man, I'm always excited for an episode of the Optic Blast Broadcast, but it's actually funny that you say that, Blake, Dylan Murdock. So if you know the Netflix series, the actor who plays Matt Murdock in the Netflix series is Charlie Cox, and I have a buddy of mine who swears up and down that I look exactly like Charlie Cox.
There you go.
Not my take, but his.
Maybe subconsciously I threw that in there just for you. I don't know. Nice. All right, the Daredevil lore is so deep that we've also brought in a special guest, a Daredevil expert, if you will. This man is the drummer for Louisville's heaviest band, Taken Lives. He's the host of the CryptKeepers Podcast, and he's literally a Guinness Book of World Records champion. Thank you so much for joining us today. I introduce you to Horror Ryan.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Hey, Ryan. Well, welcome to the Optic Blast Broadcast. We're glad to have you here as a guest. I just want to ask you a few questions, man, kind of get everybody to know you. So you are Horror Ryan. Tell us a little bit. What is the CryptKeepers Podcast?
Me and my buddy Bruce are a duo that have a podcast called The CryptKeepers, and we analyze episodes of the HBO horror anthology series Tales from the Crypt and the comic books that inspired them. Every episode of Tales from the Crypt is based on a comic from the 1950s, and we look at both, kind of look at the differences, the timeline of both, and we're currently in season 5 of Tales from the Crypt, so it's really fun. It's really cool to kind of see, the horror side of it, but then the comic book side of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I remember being a kid and watching Tales from the Crypt. I probably shouldn't have watched it, but my parents, they didn't really care. I loved horror growing up, but I remember watching those episodes, and I remember the intro always, like I could hear the intro starting off and the little Crypt Keeper popping out, and all that. So that's awesome that you have a podcast dedicated to learning and growing more in the Crypt Keeper realm of things. So very cool, man. I actually got to know you playing music together. So the Ghost Bomb and Taken Lives have played some shows together. We did like some really cool Halloween shows together that have like pro wrestling and heavy music and Halloween all mixed together. And
the best things.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I kind of sparked a friendship over talking about Daredevil. So whenever we were talking about doing a Daredevil episode, I was like, dude, I gotta hit up Ryan and see if he'd want to jump in on this with us. So what's going on with Taken Lives right now?
Right now, we're Taken Lives is a hardcore band in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're on Spotify, everything. If you're into heavy music, we're just finished some studio parts with my drums are recorded, and we're going to have some new music come out soon. And things have been going really well for the band. For someone really lazy, I'm busy all the time. But it's all passions. It's like if I'm not doing a band, I'm doing the podcast. When I'm doing the podcast, anything like that. So, but it's really fun. It's really cool to be active in so many ventures where your passions lie, for sure. Like I'm sure you guys already know, like it's so fun to just, hey, let's just hit record and talk about nerd stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much how we exist, I think. So this is what we do.
It was so and I think I mentioned this before we hit record, but like when you messaged me, hey, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the best. I get to talk about Daredevil. This is great. And I'm currently reading Marvel Comics Untold Story, and the day before you hit me up was when I got to the chapter talking about how Frank Miller created Born Again, and it was so serendipitous, and I think it's so funny. It's so great.
That's awesome, dude. The fates brought us all together to talk about Daredevil.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited for it. All right, so everybody, thanks for tuning in. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify or I don't know, Dylan. We're on like all kinds of stuff, but wherever you are watching us from, we're glad that you're here. And I think it's time to get this party started. Let's get rolling into this. Dylan, what's the news, man?
All right, so our comic news this week. So every time you tune into an episode of the Optic Blast Broadcast, you can always expect some of the latest and greatest news beyond the comic verse. And our first piece of news, I'm actually really excited about personally, and it's the official release or like reveal of the Deadpool popcorn bucket that you can get whenever the movie releases on July 26th. I know I'm going to be first in line for this. So if you don't already know, I think I've talked about it on the show before, but it's inspired by like the Dune 2 popcorn bucket that came out a while back. That is very suggestive. So we'll just keep it family friendly and just say that.
Man.
So with this popcorn bucket, it was intentionally made the same way, I guess. So it was also made by Daredevil himself. Or sorry, I'm getting my
Daredevil made the popcorn bucket. This is breaking news.
I don't know if I want a Daredevil bucket that looks like that. I don't know.
I don't know, bud.
I definitely know that I want a Wolverine bucket that looks like that because
just for the lulz.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen that, go look it up. It looks awesome. I'm going to drop a link in our Discord probably that has the reveal of it. It's just a Wolverine head with his mouth open where you reach in and grab your popcorn. So I'm going to be getting
marketing.
Yeah, exactly. The trailer is so like Deadpool. It's crazy. Like he unveils the bucket and like, I don't know if you watched the video, but the popcorn falls in, and then the butter like
it smashes it in the face.
Ryan Reynolds is goofy for that, man, but that's him. That's Deadpool, man.
Yeah, that's it. That's on brand.
That's it.
It's totally on brand.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. But I'm also excited for our next piece of news. So if you haven't heard of this little series, it's like a 4-issue series that came out last year, and it was actually Predator versus Wolverine. It's actually pretty cool. So it's written by Benjamin Percy. Like I said, it was released last year and essentially just kind of pits Wolverine and a Predator against each other in this big epic battle. But they're actually going to be continuing that story. And so a young Predator is going to be arriving to Earth. It's a different one, I believe, than the one that was set in that series. But this one is going to be searching for vibranium in Wakanda. So it's going to be like Predator versus Black Panther. It seems like it's going to be super sick. It's supposed to be releasing in August. I'm super interested in it. So I don't know. Cool. Maybe we might have to check that out on the show. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I actually didn't know they did Predator versus Wolverine. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Was that I thought I saw some promo picture the other day where it was, I think that's what you're talking about, where it was like a young Predator staring at a wall of like Wolverine heads as like a trophy. I think that was like the promotional shot for it. And it looked really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. You know, those Predators would be like in the 80s, like that was kind of a cool story. The Predator movie, one of my favorites as a kid. And, he comes across Arnold and, he kills everybody, but then Arnold is the one to like, stop him or whatever. But you learn that the Predator, that's what it does. It hunts people, and collects their heads as trophies. And, what a surprise for the Predator to come across a Wolverine. Like, I'm going to go hunt some humans. All of a sudden, this dude comes out of nowhere, That's awesome.
Can't take his head off. What's wrong?
No, what's happened? I can't do it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, you need vibranium.
Yeah, you got to do it. That must be it. That's why he's hunting it.
Yeah. I think we should definitely dive into that series probably on the show.
Yeah, man.
Because I'm a big Predator fan, and I haven't read any of the Predator like comic stuff, so I'm very interested in it.
Didn't they do Predator versus Batman a long time ago? I feel like that was a thing too. I don't know. Predator just jumps in and out of comics, so all right.
I don't know.
Future episode, we got it.
There you go.
Another thing, I feel like I'm sticking with this Wolverine vibe because we're coming fresh off of X-Men 97 and everything. But so this next thing is actually a fan film that I watched. It came out like a week or two ago, and it's called Logan the Wolf. and it's this Viking variant of Logan, and it's written by, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, or like so the film is by Godfrey Reichwart, something like that. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but basically you see like this epic version of Wolverine that's like a Viking, and he just goes in and just like it's this epic, like super awesome choreography and like cinematography, like this is just epic battle against Wolverine and like a bunch of other dudes. And then like at the end, you see Magneto come in, and he like is like has all these like little swords that are like that he's making float above him, and then all of a sudden they just go flying at Wolverine, and then it ends. And it's actually really cool. It's only like 10 minutes long, but I thought it was really epic. It's definitely worth a watch and a cool take on Wolverine. So
where did you watch it again?
It's on YouTube.
YouTube.
Oh, cool.
All right, I have to look that up. Wolverine the Wolf.
Logan the Wolf.
Oh, Logan the Wolf. All right, Logan the Wolf. You got it, dude. I'm gonna check that out. That sounds awesome.
That's cool.
It's pretty sick, dude.
I like fan made stuff. You know, it's like people who pour their passion into it, because they had to sink tons of money into that.
I think there was one, probably my favorite fan film. It's a Robin story, and it's about I can't remember what it's called, but basically it's like it's like a fake trailer, essentially is what the fan film is, and it's where Batman has died. He's been murdered, and an older Robin puts the suit back on to find his killer.
Wow.
It's on YouTube. I think it's called like Robin Fan Film. It's really good. It looks really cool. And I was like, please give these guys money.
Yeah, right.
Please.
Awesome.
I'm a big fan of fan films, because like I just feel like those, like you were saying, Blake, like those are people that care about what they're doing and what they're making. Like they don't have these big budget like throwaway things that they can do. Like there's gonna be like, all right, we have all this money, let's just make something. Like these people are like, okay, I have this little amount of money, but I really want to make this thing, and they put everything that they can into it, and it just always turns out phenomenal.
Right.
There are some rough ones out there, but with low budget, that's expected. But I feel like there's some great stories and plots that could be really used in bigger budget productions, but we just get things like Star Wars The Last Jedi,
which I haven't seen. I think I've only seen. I saw the first 6. Like I didn't think I've seen any of the. Well, no, I take that back. I did see whatever the one is called when they brought it back. The first of them.
The Force Awakens.
Okay, that, and I watched it, and I might get heat from your fans on this. I like Star Wars. It's cool. Yeah. I just prefer like Battlestar Galactica or Doctor Who. It's just my flavor.
Right.
But I watched The Force Awakens, and I'm like, is this the same plot as A New Hope?
Like, it's the
exact same plot. It's just you switch the names. And so, which I thought was cool. I mean, you need it for a new generation. I'm just, I'm not one of those like near 40 guys or like, it has to be this.
Right.
And but I have heard that fans are not thrilled with the movies, but they love the shows. Like I heard The Mandalorian's good.
Yeah, The Mandalorian's sick. Yeah, the Mandalorian is like pretty much the savior of Star Wars in my eyes. So that's how
like
bad
Deadpool.
It's gotten. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there you
Deadpool
go.
to MCU.
Yep, pretty much. Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of cut off our Star Wars talk there, because I could talk about it all day. And
okay.
So
Star Wars episode also needs to be done. Okay.
It does, because I need to know more about Star Wars. I want to hear it. Honestly.
I definitely think we should do a Star Wars episode. I could probably do like 10 episodes just on.
And
Star
we
Wars.
plug it all the time, but Marvel Unlimited, tons of Star Wars in there.
Oh yeah. That might be the only good thing that came from like the Disney purchase.
Huh.
Oh, well, it's funny because in the book that I'm reading, it, like I said, I'm in like the mid 80s, and the chapter before was like the late 70s, and that's when they got the rights to make the Star Wars comic. But everyone thought that no one thought it was going to be a big deal.
Right.
Before it came out, and they were like, "Hey, it's a cheap. They want us to push this thing," and they were like, "Okay, well, we'll do it." And then all of a sudden, it's one of the biggest sellers. And honestly, the Star Wars license to Marvel probably saved them through the late 70s.
I would think so. Absolutely.
For sure. Like that, and they had I mean, they sound silly now, but they were big sellers at the time. Like there was a whole bunch of there was a Battlestar Galactica comic. There was, I think, Rom was his name, which is because robots were really big in like the late 70s, early 80s. And so that whole sci-fi part, it really became a big part of their profits in the comics, and it saved them, got them through until good writers made stuff like Born Again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know you've probably read it throughout your book, but like, I mean, history-wise, Marvel teetered on bankruptcy all the time.
Oh yeah, and they've been bought and sold multiple times, and it's one of those things where, like you said, I mean, I've been a lifelong Marvel fan. My whole journey kind of started when because just like everyone my age, I loved Batman 66 reruns. I loved the X-Men animated series. I loved your episode on the X-Men 97. It was really cool, and I loved it.
Thanks, man.
I loved it. It was great. It was great, kind of complimentary. Yeah, I liked watching it and then immediately checking out the podcast. It was really cool.
Oh, thanks, dude.
But when I got my first apartment, it was within walking distance of a comic shop.
Oh, no way.
And so I would get off work. I would walk 30 feet outside my back door on my porch to get some comics, check it out. I like comics, sounds pretty cool. And then I read it, and then that was right in the middle of Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which that sealed it. I was done. I was like, this is it. This is the coolest comic I've ever read in my life. This is the first time I really was like, you can do kind of grounded crime noir in a comic, and it works. Yeah. And so that was kind of like what flipped, and that's the reason why this wall of debt.
And Bendis is awesome anyway. No matter what Bendis touches, seems to be gold.
Oh yeah, his Avengers stuff's really good too.
Whew, I know, that's what got me super into Avengers. But yeah,
I believe that is all we have today for news. So, Blake, you know what time it is?
Oh,
it's toy time.
It's toy time. All right, guys. So here at Optic Blast Broadcast, we love everything about comic books and the worlds they build, especially the toys. Now, today's toy is actually more of a collectible. In honor of us reviewing Frank Miller's Daredevil Born Again, I thought I'd show off the Batman Dark Knight Returns book and mask set. So here it is. If I back it up here. So you see the Dark Knight Returns mask. The graphic novel is in there as well. You gotta flip it over here. You can kind of see the picture a little bit better. I have not opened this guy. I usually open the toys and play with them unless they're like some sort of crazy collectible, but I've not opened this. It's just too cool. I don't want to. The packaging is awesome. You've got the Frank Miller Batman on the side, which if you've never read the Dark Knight Returns, I really it's a classic, man. Frank Miller, I mean, he's awesome in the stuff that he writes. There's the top of the box there, but it has his mask in it, the Dark Knight Returns mask. So I highly recommend you checking that comic out. I'm sure we'll do an episode on it eventually. But yeah, the book and mask set, it comes with the graphic novel in there. The graphic novel is the 30th anniversary edition, if that matters to you. It comes with that. So I think it's because it was a part 1 and part 2. I think it's both in one as a graphic novel, and then it's the 30th anniversary edition of it as well. And you get this cool Batman mask with it also. So it'd be cool to show on display. So I think right now, if you look it up on Amazon, it's actually on sale. It's 45% off. So it'll maybe just run a little over $20 for this set. I think it was 22 something.
That's cool.
If you just buy the 30th anniversary edition paperback of the graphic novel, it's like 20 or 18 something. So spend a couple extra bucks and get the mask.
Yeah.
Right? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it bonkers that Frank Miller wrote Born Again and The Dark Knight Returns? They were released in the same year.
That is absolutely bonkers. That's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah. We talked about it last week, or what week was it, Dylan? Oh, The Killing Joke.
Yep.
Like the run that these writers have, like when they break into something and they really break into it, it's like you're like, how did like The Watchmen and The Killing Joke and like all this come out? These are like iconic stories come out in the same year, you know?
Yeah. You know, and there's cultural kind of parts to it because and we could talk about it further, especially because Daredevil and I think Born Again was one of the sparks that kind of lit a more darker tone in comics.
Yeah.
And Frank Miller was definitely in the lead of that for sure. And it's such a cool part of history, especially because like I'm assuming we're roughly the same age, you and me.
Yeah.
Dylan's the young one, right?
Yeah, Dylan's the young one. He brings the young perspective. I'm old man Lockman, and he brings the I'm 41, so
I'm about to turn 40.
Yeah, we're right there, man.
Good job, Pop. You did it.
That's right.
But it's like, and it's funny because like the Tales from the Crypt, or like, you know, the kind of the gritty noir stories like Born Again, is like, these were really extreme. And could they have been made with the parental guidance that they had at the time? Could they come out now?
Right.
With the same kind of like, oh, I'm just going to go buy the newest, issue of Daredevil where he blows up a truck.
Yeah.
Or he shoots a guy, or he, downs a helicopter or something like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Wonder what happened to our generation.
Yeah, right. Go ahead. I was just saying, so yeah, check it out. Definitely, I saw it on Amazon. It was cheap on there. I'm sure you can find it around other things. But if you're a big Frank Miller, Batman Dark Knight Returns, definitely check it out. So that's about it for Toy Time. I think what we'll do, because we're ready. We are so ready to jump into Daredevil talk. We got 3 passionate Daredevil fans here ready to roll. Before we get rolling, I think let's take a break. Let's get some water, hydrate ourselves, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go full throttle on Daredevil. All right, we are back from break. All right, so last couple of days, I actually sat down and I watched what has been told to me to be the worst superhero movie of all time. I thought I had seen the Daredevil 2003 movie. And I thought it was just maybe so bad I erased it from my memory. But as I sat down to watch it, I quickly realized I had not seen this movie before. I think I let all my friends talk me out of seeing it. There was a big flurry of movies. We talked about earlier Marvel facing bankruptcy, and they sold a lot of their big key characters off to other movie studios. Your X-Men, Ghost Rider, Punisher, Daredevil, Spider-Man. I mean, that's probably the biggest one you think of, but they sold them off to movie studios. They didn't have a movie studio back then. Kids growing up nowadays, it would be crazy for them to think that the Marvel Studios wasn't like what it is now, the MCU, but back then other movie studios owned it. And so a lot of those movies were not particularly loved by the fans, but I just remember my friends trashing this movie so hard. And I honestly, at that time, didn't really know who Daredevil was. I think he showed up in like one Spider-Man animated series episode or something. Like I just didn't really know much about him. And so I didn't care. And I think we all hated back then, at least as a young, new metal angsty guy. I don't know. Like I didn't like Ben Affleck anyway. And, so I don't know. But anyway, I sat down to watch the movie. And, it was a little bit different than I guess I had preconceived in my head. Like I said, I watched it and I realized like I have not seen this movie. And at this time in life, I love Daredevil a lot. So it was neat to see it from a new perspective. I guess I've never seen it before. I just assumed that it was bad. But let's go to Dylan here. Dylan, you're coming from the younger generation for us. So you kind of grew up, right? Like this movie was it part of your childhood? Did you watch it as a kid or? Oh
yeah. So just to put it in perspective though, I was 2 when the movie came out, but
I graduated high school when this movie came out.
Yeah, right.
But even then, this is definitely a part of my childhood. So even honestly, all those early superhero movies were my jam. So those early 2000s. So actually kind of put a list here just so I can mention them. But obviously the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, and then you have Jennifer Garner in there too. I thought was awesome. And then of course Tobey Spider-Man. Everybody, if you've seen an episode before, especially our Spider-Man episode, I'm a Tobey stan. So I love Tobey. Eric Bana, I think is how you say his name, from the Hulk. I thought that was awesome. Christian Bale, I know people hated him, some dude, the Fox X-Men, like that's my, like that whole era. It was like that's what got me into superheroes in general. So people have their opinions on all those movies, but I love them. Especially the Daredevil one, dude. Like people hate on it, but I think it's great. I think it's awesome. It's my first introduction into Daredevil. I loved it. Granted, I do think the TV show is a lot better, but I'm sure we'll get into that later. But the movie as a whole, like, I don't know, it's very nostalgic for me. And like when I think about it, I don't know, dude. It's just, I thought it was great. It was part of my childhood and I love it. So
that's cool. That's really cool.
It's a cool perspective because I kind of thought about it when I was watching it, and in my head I was like, "All right, this movie's probably going to be garbage, everybody." And as like I said, I started to watch it, realizing I actually have never seen this. That your perspective will be much different than myself or even Ryan's, because you grew up as a kid with this being your Daredevil, like your introduction to it, just like you talked about with the Tobey Spider-Man movie. That's such a cool perspective to hear from someone like me. It almost reminds me of the Star Wars, like the newer movies are I say newer, they're not newer now. The ones that came out when me and Ryan were in high school, the like 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, like my generation, like most of my friends, I liked it all right. I'm a pretty casual guy, though. I don't hate on it. I'll usually just kind of like everything I watch, to be honest. Yeah. It's okay, I guess. I didn't like dislike them. They were all right. But the kids now are adults and they love them. Like Hayden Christensen has so much love now, whereas my kind of generation, we all kind of like, yeah, he's kind of lame. How is that guy Darth Vader, right? But now he has like all this love and fan support. So I think that's kind of some of this what we're seeing, and what I was hoping to hear from Dylan, which is now confirmed, is that like, yeah, I grew up with this. You know, this was my introduction to Daredevil. So, Ryan, you know, you're our Daredevil expert. You know, walk us through this. What do you think about this Daredevil movie?
Well, to add to Dylan's point, and I think that this is something that anyone that's passionate or a fan about anything, because I think one thing that personally for me, I'm not a big fan of is gatekeeping. I've never cared about Marvel versus DC. I've never cared about Star Wars versus Star Trek. Like what you like. And my whole thing is like, oh, if I see something like he said, I'll usually be like, oh, it wasn't for me. It's no big deal, but I don't care. Like it's never been that big a deal. And it's really interesting that Dylan has a perspective where you've seen the Daredevil movie as a young person and then the Netflix series as an adult.
Right.
So it's almost you grew up with the films, which is really cool. And I think like I remember when the Daredevil movie came out, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's got some cheesy parts. It's a little this, it's a little that. But I mean, I think people need to have a better perspective of like, maybe it's not for you. You know, maybe it's for the generation at the time. And you should be okay with that. It's, you know, I'm always going to have my Daredevil. Dylan's going to have his, you know, everyone's going to have theirs. And isn't that the beauty of, you know, nerdy passions, is that we all have a slightly different perspective on different things, and they mean different things to us. And I just find it really awesome when I love something, when I obviously behind me, when I get really into something really passionate, I want to know everything. I want to know every version of it. I want to, you know, really dig deep, and like, I'm a researcher by nature. And so I think it's really cool. And I love that perspective. I think it's great. And I will say, if it weren't for those movies in the early 2000s, we would not have an MCU.
Yeah.
Without those being popular, none of this would have happened. Now, they did put themselves in a hole, because once they did get popular, they couldn't make their own movies because they sold their movie rights.
Yeah.
But in just like in the book that I'm reading about Marvel, is like, I came into reading this book having a certain opinion. But just like everything, just like any relationship, any business, any passion, it's complicated. It's very complicated. So to have these blank statements is like, this is terrible, or this is whatever, it's kind of unfair. And so like for me personally, I think it's fine. It's a good movie. It's entertaining. It's cool to see kind of a big budget version of Daredevil for the first time. And to be honest, it's in the book that I was reading, Frank Miller was actually invited by the director of the Daredevil movie to be on set, to be like just a associate, just to help with tidbits and stuff. And the Fox executives took none of his advice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it was like, well, that's disappointing. I mean, he basically, because there are little snippets of Born Again in the 2003 movie, kind of the gritty, I will say one of the best things about the movie is Ben Urich, who is played by Joe Pampliano, I think is who it was. But when he tosses the cigarette, it lights up the Daredevil on fire.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. It's got its own charm, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is like I said, I thought I had seen it, but never had. So as I watched it, I'm like, man, I let my friends talk me out of seeing this. They were trying to say, yeah, peer pressure. You know, you just don't like it because everybody else said it sucks, and you know,
yeah.
But as I watched it and being a Daredevil fan now, honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. Like there were some super cheesy parts, but also you have to think about when this movie came out. You have like the new metal, like the band, like the soundtrack playing behind, but they did that in movies then. You don't do it as much now, you know. Every movie had a soundtrack back then, you know, and that's just they sold CDs along with the movies. And so that's why there's like the music that's playing. I wasn't really a fan. I will say that Jennifer Garner is more likable to me than the Elektra from the MCU series. But that's just because it's Jennifer Garner. But and I don't know that she's really Elektra. Like, it's just my wife was actually watching it with me, and she's like, it's weird to see Jennifer Garner in like an action movie, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know, that is kind of strange. There's some really cheesy scenes where like her and Matt have like a dance martial arts battle in a playground. Like, what is this? Like, so there are some cringy moments to me. But some of the things that shine are when he's in the Daredevil costume and like battling Bullseye in the church and like the glass is shattering of the like they captured some really cool Daredevil moments. Anytime he's running across rooftops, swinging around on his billy club, like I felt like this looks like the Daredevil comic came to life, you know? Yeah. So like I didn't hate it as I thought that I would. I don't know that I would say it's a great movie, but I appreciate for what it was in its era of time and for what it did for people like Dylan, you know, to grow up with a super dude. When I remember when it was rare to see a comic book movie, like a live action comic book, anything like Batman was pretty much it. And then as time went on, like X-Men, Daredevil, when all that stuff started popping off, it was like I really liked that Punisher movie. I'm going to get hate for this. I liked that Ghost Rider movie. Like that stuff was cool to me, you know? It was just neat to see these characters come to life. And I'm kind of bummed I let myself get talked out of not watching this when I was younger. You know, that was to me, I think it's pretty cool, you know?
I think things come in cycles because like perfect example is Batman 66. It was a huge show in 1966. It dips, it gets canceled, it gets made fun of. There's this huge push by DC. And you all would know more about it because I'm definitely more a Marvel guy. Right. But there was, trying to remember I know Frank Miller did stuff, but I think O'Neill, I can't remember, but did Batman stuff and made it darker. Like they intentionally we need to get away from Batman 66 as much as possible.
Right.
What's really popular now? Anything Batman 66. Yeah. Just because, you know, it has its own charm and it ages well. And like like with Dylan, every generation you have a different perspective of the same thing. Right. So like for me, the movie is cool. They do some unique things that I've never seen before, like Daredevil sleeps in a pool of water.
Yeah. It's like a compression tank, like so he doesn't hear anything, you know.
Yeah, that's at least like that's an interesting take on if someone really did have those powers, you know, what would it be? And I think Michael Clark Duncan does an amazing job as Kingpin.
Yeah.
His presence is amazing.
And you were telling me before we recorded that there's a director's cut where they actually do more. I haven't seen that, where they do more backstory for Kingpin.
Oh, yeah. They do backstory for Kingpin, and I think it's roughly 30 minutes added to the movie. So I highly recommend watching the director's cut if it's possible. I'm not sure if it's on Disney Plus or not, but it's definitely worth the watch for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fun fact, though, like that was pretty much the introduction to Kingpin for me too, was his take on the character. So I always thought seeing other versions of it was very interesting because I'm like, to me, Kingpin is Michael Clark Duncan's version of it.
Right.
And then so like it's very different, I feel like. So I think that's really cool. Another thing about the movie, just to kind of that I just kind of randomly thought about that was kind of nostalgic for me. So when I was like a kid, I used to fold anytime I got any kind of dollar bills or anything like that, I used to fold it like different ways.
Oh,
Daredevil.
he did. So
Yeah,
he knew the
'cause
difference.
I thought it was cool, but it didn't really hit me until I got older and realized, oh, he literally just does that because he's blind and he needs to know what is what. But I just thought it was cool, and I used to do that as a kid.
Yeah,
So,
That's rad.
yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool to me. Like, I don't know, it's just a cool perspective that you were a kid and this was that's awesome that you folded your money like Daredevil. Like, wow,
Right. That's cool. That's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And what is it? Jon Favreau. He plays Foggy Nelson, he's Foggy. He's one of the heads of MCU. He's the reason we have the MCU.
Well, when the movie started,
yeah,
when the movie started and his name popped up, I was like, Favreau had a hand in this? Like, I was like, I didn't think Favreau was running anything back then. And then he pops in as Foggy, and I'm like, oh. And let's be real. Like you said, these movies paved the way for the MCU. There's no way that Marvel would have ever made Iron Man their first movie on their own if they didn't. If it wasn't for them not having the rights to all their other characters. So they dug deep. They're like, well, we didn't sell Iron Man, so let's do something with that. And then Robert Downey Jr. comes in, and that kicks off what we do.
Oh, yeah. From the perspective of the time, and it's really cool to hear that, something that Daredevil did made a kid like thought it was cool. Right. Because let's be real, at the time, Iron Man, Captain America, basically all the properties that Marvel didn't sell were not in their top 10 properties.
Nope, not at all.
Even the moment that I heard that a Guardians of the Galaxy movie was going to get made, I was like, why?
Why? Exactly.
They're side characters in Infinity Gauntlet. That's it. Yeah. Like, why?
These dudes are a bunch of B-level jabronis is what I thought.
Right? And it shows what we know because, you could, if the writing is good and the passion is there, you can make anything entertaining.
Absolutely. And now Guardians are huge and and I love Guardians. I didn't before the movies, which is weird, right? Like I'm supposed to be the comic book guy. Like, I know about the comics the movies totally turned me on to Guardians of the Galaxy.
And different versions are better for different things. And I know that they from my knowledge, they actually changed Star-Lord in the comics to be more like Chris Pratt, kind of the goofy kind of character when he was a straight up soldier,
right?
In the comics back in the day, in the 80s, and he wasn't even that big of a deal. He wasn't in the Guardians in the 80s during the Infinity Gauntlet saga. It was Drax and Nebula, and then they had that little elf. I can't remember his name. He was in the Eternals. He showed up at the end of the Eternals, and I was like, okay, stop it, y'all. What are you doing?
Yeah. Now I don't, like I said, I'm not a usual, I don't usually hate on a lot of movies. I'm pretty easy to please. But The Eternals was trash to me.
It was just too ambitious. It was, props for trying to give Jack Kirby, because I'm a huge Jack Kirby. I will fight on that hill. I really, especially reading this book, realizing how much
what Jack did.
Oh yeah. There would be no Marvel. And personally, just me, I think that everything that he co-created with Stan Lee should have both their names on it equally.
I think that's I agree.
I think fans are retroactively appreciating Jack Kirby for what it is, because even if he didn't write the dialogue for a lot of things, he created the feel, how things looked, how Thor and Captain America. He created Captain America 20 years before the Marvel Universe was created.
Yeah.
So I'll always fight for that man's legacy.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. There was actually a thing in the Born Again, which we're getting ready to get into, but there was a page that said in, what did it say? Something respectfully, something tribute.
Oh, the dedicated.
Dedicated to Jack Kirby. Yeah.
And it's so funny. Wow. This whole thing makes too much sense that, like I said, in the book that I'm reading, Frank Miller was a huge champion for Jack Kirby to get his original art back.
Right.
And whenever he would do that, like you said, he would put, this is dedicated to Jack Kirby. Every time he would do press releases for anything, he would bring up Jack Kirby, because Marvel at the time was not allowing him to have his original art back.
Right.
And that was a big, big thing for him in the 80s. And a whole bunch of writers and artists that got together and did a petition. I still don't think that he got it, but I'll let you know once I finish that chapter in the book.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, let me know. But yeah, so that's kind of where I landed on Daredevil 2003. Not nearly as bad as people had told me, if like I said, I'm not the harsh rater. If I had to say like on a scale of 1 to 5, I'd say a solid 3. I didn't have a problem really. There were some cheesy parts. I did not care for Bullseye, Colin Farrell, just too cheesy for me. But he was a hokey villain, and I guess in that era of time of comic book movies, it makes sense.
It's a product of its time.
Yeah,
and that's cool. It has its place in history, and now that like time has passed, it's like it's really cool that we have. Because technically that wasn't the first live action Daredevil. He was in a Hulk special with Lou Ferrigno.
Wow, no, I never knew that.
The Trial of the Hulk, and it's just his black suit, and it's just black spandex.
Right.
And you'll have to look it up, but there was an attempt to make a Daredevil Black Widow movie, and there are production photos from the 70s of a man in a Daredevil suit, but it's just like body paint.
Wow.
It's weird. It's really weird. The 70s were a weird time.
They were strange.
It only gets weird in the 80s. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, let's move on to let's go take a break, and then we're going to come back from break, and we're going to get into Daredevil Born Again, talk a little bit about the next Netflix series, what was going on in comics at the time, and we will be right back. All right, we are back from break, and it's time to get into it. Let's get into Daredevil Born Again. Born Again is a 1986 comic story arc that appeared in Marvel Comics series Daredevil, written by Frank Miller, which we've talked a lot about here already, but written by Frank Miller and drawn by Dave Mazzucchelli, I guess is how you would say that. Mazzucchelli. Yeah, there you go. Italian. This dude is Italian for sure.
Oh, yeah. I looked it up. That's how I know.
Yeah, awesome. The storyline first appeared in Daredevil 227 through 231. It was later reprinted as a graphic novel format. It included the previous issue, 226, and then the follow-up of 232 and 233, which when we pulled up the story arc on Marvel Unlimited, it combines all of that as Born Again. So that is now what is considered Born Again. The storyline. So it's the story details Daredevil's descent into insanity and destitution at the Kingpin's hands, as well as a subsequent struggle. Come on, Blake, to build new life for himself. So Kingpin definitely puts Daredevil on the hardest of times. We see a version of Matt that I don't know that I really see in other comics. The storyline was loosely adapted as a 2018 third season of the Netflix Marvel Cinematic Universe streaming television series Daredevil. Some themes throughout, of course, are death, baptism, reborn. There's a lot of like Catholic Christian parallels throughout the thing. As you're even like some of the splash pages, I'm like, dude, that he's straight up standing like Jesus in that moment, Mm-hmm. So they really kind of pulled from like Matt's Catholic faith. So very cool. All right, so that's kind of just the general synopsis. Talking about Born Again, getting into it. We started it out. We literally landed on this just because of a Google search. I was like, me and Dylan both wanted to get into Daredevil, wanted to read something. I was thinking about The Man Without Fear, but I had already read that. I was like, well, I want to read something new. And Born Again is, when I looked at it, one of the top Daredevil suggested story arcs to read.
I think it's considered the big one. Yeah. I think there's always been like different runs. I mean, I like some of the 60s stuff because it's more swashbuckly. He's very more debonair, like, and there's even a run in like the 2010s by Mark Waid where he just, his identity is out there. He wears a suit. He wears a Daredevil belt buckle. It's amazing. He moves to San Francisco. So there's I think it's the same as Batman, where there's these two equally loved versions. There's the goofy, fun one, and then there's the really gritty noir one. And so like I think both are really good. And this is Frank Miller had been working to kind of push Daredevil more into the crime noir side for a few years before this, but this is definitely the boom. Like this storyline is the Daredevil gets nasty and mean.
Yeah, and that's like when like we were talking about earlier. I didn't know like the Marvel Netflix series is really honestly responsible for me liking Daredevil. And it is more gritty, it is more noir, and then that's what got me to start reading The Man Without Fear, which I loved that, and it really put a lot of respect on Daredevil for me. And going through Born Again, I saw so much how even the movie, the 2003 movie, but the Netflix series pulled from that version of Daredevil, that gritty, noir, more dark, street level justice, the Daredevil. So
I like street level heroes, to be honest. 'Cause, I mean, it's cool to have powers and stuff, but it's like Daredevil isn't necessarily about the powers. It's about the person. It's about the reason I love Daredevil so much because he is one of the most human characters. He has crises of faith. He has crises within himself. He's terrible at relationships. He's terrible at friendships, and but he's always trying. Like that's the thing that I'm always like. That's why I root him on, because I'm like I think he's one of the more relatable kind of heroes, where it's like if you really did lose everything, you probably go crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing about Born Again. You go through this timeline with Matt, where he starts out a Daredevil. He starts out with he's having that battle with the guy who makes all the costumes. Gladiator, yeah. He has a battle with him, and you find out about why he's doing that. Why is he? And this is just a heads up. This comic is really old. If you've never read it and you don't want anything to be spoiled about it, go pause right now and go read it and then come back.
It's worth it.
But yeah, absolutely it is. But if otherwise, we're just going to talk about it. It's just that's your one warning if you're not wanting to be spoiled about it, right? But so he goes and fights him, and you understand then why, and then that took me back to the Netflix series where that character also he talks about Betsy, and I was like, oh, because I didn't really know what that was from,
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. So to me, it was like my love of my Daredevil really is the Netflix introduction. And then getting into this, I'm like, now I see where they created him from.
It's cool to see like where it gets to where it goes. The little things. Because even like one of my favorite characters in the Daredevil universe is Turk, who is this slimy underling that's basically like a gun runner. And in Born Again, he wears a Santa suit and stabs Matt Murdock in the stomach. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Turk. I mean, Turk's in the Netflix series.
Yeah.
And it's great. I love it.
Yeah, man. So I guess I'm starting it out. Like one thing that shocked me right off the bat. Remember, my perspective is I'm coming from the Netflix series, trying to put things together and see where they came from. Karen Page, right off the bat, as soon as the series starts out, I don't know her backstory at this point. I figure it out as time goes on. But I'm like, did she really just sell out Matt's secret identity? Like, Karen, what are you doing, man?
How dare you? Deborah Ann Wall would never do this. Never. No. It's so weird. It's such a weird thing to do, but it's like it brings in the gritty first panel.
It does. It does. Deborah Ann Wall that's my girl, man. I like her in the Netflix series.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that when I think of live action Daredevil, Foggy, Karen, Kingpin, it's all Netflix. No disrespect to anyone else, they're all great, but to me, it's like they got it. They got it exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's jarring to see Karen Page in the position that she's in at the start of the story.
Right. And I think I text Dylan off the bat, and I'm like, Dylan, what the heck? What is Karen doing, man? So Karen sells him out. That's the main story. Kingpin then gets his identity and begins to just make Matt's life absolutely horrible. He puts the Daredevil
just destroying him systematically.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Absolutely. He loses his career, loses his money, loses his house,
loses his girlfriend
to
his best friend.
Dude, double betrayal.
That's not really brought up. Like there is to add to the Karen Page thing. So she, at the beginning of this story, is an addict living in Mexico and in adult films. And so to get a fix, she sells Daredevil's identity. It gets sold to mobsters and mobsters to keep up the ladder till it gets to Kingpin. And I think one of the best panels, and especially in the first issue, is Kingpin gets handed the letter. He doesn't open it. And it says, this is Daredevil's identity. And he looks over at Wesley, who's also in the Netflix series, his right-hand man. Yep. And he goes, kill everyone who's touched this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the Kingpin, dude.
Yeah, that's Kingpin. Like, this is not only is this like the quintessential like Daredevil story, it might be the quintessential Kingpin story.
Yeah.
Because they took everything from the Netflix show. Like it is this Kingpin.
Yeah.
All the way down to, I think in season 3, he has like in his apartment, he has this underground like computer room that's how he kind of keeps tabs of the city. That's in Born Again. He's like working out while there's TVs next to him, and they're like, "No, just blow up the building. It's fine. Don't worry, it's all good." You know,
what about
kill him.
a side note? What about Kingpin throwing up a clean 405 pounds just over his head while he's just sitting there talking to Wesley? Like,
casually.
What a beast! He's not even. He's just talking to him. Like, yeah, go ahead and kill everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, what a beast. So yeah, Kingpin, you hit it, man. This is definitely a great Kingpin story. And it is the Kingpin of Netflix series that we see. As Kingpin like makes Daredevil's life horrible, and Foggy, it kind of there's like some themes of like Foggy and Matt's girlfriend, which is no longer his girlfriend, start to develop a relationship together. You know, that goes along right alongside it. Meanwhile, Matt is like going through the ringer of literally losing everything. And as it kind of like progresses through the story of Born Again, you really see this like death kind of born again. I mean, that's the name of it. This theme like come back through. And I touched on it a minute ago, but they touch on like some of the things of like Matt's like Catholic faith is brought into it. And then you really see that in Netflix season 3, struggles with his faith, the redemptive side of his Christian beliefs, his Catholic beliefs. I just thought that was so cool that Frank Miller tied all that in. Like he knows the character that well that he pulls in those things, even in the artwork when they pulled in their artwork. Like I said, I remember there's a scene where like he's almost like Jesus, like the way he's like stared out on the splash page, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of like looked into some of that and like read more about it. And I thought that was really a kind of unique thing for them to bring in. The grittiness of it all is probably the like core Daredevil to me, you know, how it's just so gritty and dark and there's thugs and people getting killed and, you know, way more, than you would in like a standard, like Spider-Man comic or something.
Right.
Like that, right.
For sure. And, like, so, Dylan, was this your first time reading the comic?
Yeah, it was definitely my first time reading it. And I honestly echo everything that Blake's just been saying about like the parallels that you can see. Cause like, I feel like often comic fans will watch the film version and then they get that like, we're like, oh, like this is where they're pulling that from. This is where that was inspired from. But like for me, it's like the opposite. Like because that's what I watched first as I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, that's where they got that from. That's where they got this from. And I feel like that's super interesting. Having that, like finding all the parallels and all the little Easter egg things that inspire that. So I thought it was really cool reading through the whole
We're
story.
kind of like experiencing it in reverse because I went through the exact same experience, but in reverse, where I was watching the Netflix series and I was like, that's Turk. Oh, that's Karen. Oh, that's Foggy. All, you know, that's Fogwell's Jim. That's, you know, this and this and this. And so it's really cool because I know exactly what you're talking about. It just happened for me in the show, but for you, the comic, that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I agree, man. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I would think that this story, I really like The Man Without Fear, and I don't know. They're probably neck and neck. I can't say one is better than the other to me. I just think I really like them both. You know? Yeah,
I really look at Frank Miller's entire run with Daredevil as just one piece. I mean, I know like the individual stories, they're really cool. And for me, it's always going to be Bendis's Daredevil is my favorite. But that's what made me like a fan for life. And then when I look back and I was like, oh, these stories are awesome. These are, you could see the gradual kind of climb to what he is now. And I'm assuming like with the Netflix series, they had so much to work with.
Yeah.
That it was a natural fit. And it was really good that it was really the first time, if you think about it, that it sparked R-rated superhero content. Because after that Netflix series, you have The Punisher, you have Luke Cage, you have Jessica Jones.
Right.
And it just kind of booms. And then would we have Deadpool without Daredevil, where it shows like it's okay to show a gritty crime noir story that isn't for kids. And that's okay.
Agreed. And I think we've kind of hit this now twice. Daredevil probably deserves more credit than people give him in the cinematic universe, not just the movies, but also TV series. I remember when they announced Daredevil was going to be like gritty and R-rated, I was like, that's weird. Okay. And then I watched it and I was like, oh yeah. Okay. That first season, it hooked me. It made me such a big Daredevil fan. But when he doesn't even have the Daredevil costume in that season, he's just wearing the black with like,
which I think is the best choice because it's like you said, it pretty much is the man without fear. The origin, the black suit, and all that stuff. And the final reveal of the suit at the end of the first season is amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I think what hooked me, like I started watching it, it's like, this is pretty cool. It's like a crime show. I'm into this. Is when the kid gets kidnapped and he goes to rescue the kid. And he has that hallway scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And whoever did that fight choreography, dude, kudos to them.
And it's like I said before, where that's kind of at least the charm that I find in the character and the story and the is that it's not perfect.
Right.
If you truly were going to break into a mobster's place to rescue a child, would it be bam, 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 headshots all the time? Oh, look at me, I'm sliding under a thing and boom, and then the building explodes behind me. Like, no, you would punch as soon as you punch someone, you fall down, you trip over this, and so it's a perfect physical representation of the themes of Daredevil, I think.
Yeah,
and even the biblical parts of it, because there's light shining on him. He's a savior. Yeah. It's got that kind of thing going on too.
Yeah, one thing I love about Daredevil and I is when he is in an environment and he breaks the lights, and then because then his enemies can't see, and then he always has this grin, like he just smiles and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to beat the crap out of everybody." It's like.
It's really cool because that was explored. I can't remember the writer at the time, but there was a run on Daredevil where that's brought up, and that's an interesting point that you bring up, where he discovers, because he tries to stop being Daredevil for a while, and he's like, yes, I want to protect, yes, I want to save Hell's Kitchen, do everything I can, but he likes it. That's the thing. He likes beating up bad people.
Yeah. And
I think he's really the first superhero that's like, no, I like it. That's fine.
Yeah, this is what I like to do. You even see that in the Born Again. So Karen, I mean, we haven't really broken down the whole story, but as you move on through it, Karen eventually gets back into the picture. She's got this mobster dude that she gets back to Hell's Kitchen or back to New York City, and she ends up getting back with Daredevil. He's helping her detox off the drugs. And there's a scene where she saves that costume that came on the dude that was going to kill him when the building blows up. And but Matt's she's I think she says something like, I don't know if it's Matt or if it's Daredevil. Which one is he? Or something like that. He's pacing.
It's all intertwined. It all becomes, it's complicated, just like people,
Yeah. So Kingpin is going through it, trying to destroy Daredevil, and there's this really cool halfway through the story arc where Kingpin is on the top of the world. He is so excited. His own people in his circle are like, hey man, maybe you're a little too obsessed with this Matt Murdock guy. He tries to kill him, thinks he kills him, then there was no body. Matt survives, and the Kingpin's own inner circle of mobsters and gangsters and leaders, businessmen are all kind of dude, you're kind of going over. And it just shows he's so obsessed with killing Matt because Matt actually instilled some fear in him. And Kingpin's not used to that, Right. And so they have this ultimate arch rivalry here where Matt is trying to be the moral good, the lawyer, the guy who will stand up to Kingpin. In the Ben Affleck movie, there was a great scene where Kingpin and him meet at a gala or something. Mm-hmm. And Kingpin's like, oh, maybe I'll hire you guys for one of my things. And Foggy is like, yeah, hey. And then Matt's like, no, absolutely not. We would never support you, right. Straight to his face. Everyone tells Kingpin yes. No one tells Kingpin no. Right. And Matt's like, yeah, dude, no, it's not going to happen.
I think it's a very yin yang, and I think you make a very valid point that I think that Daredevil and Kingpin are one of the unsung rivalries in comics, because you have two people that view Law and Order different ways. Like Kingpin legitimately thinks that he's doing something good for New York by controlling the crime and being the head of it and spearheading it. And Matt's like, no, we can eradicate it. And there's even a really beautiful scene, and I'm pretty sure Daredevil season 2 on Netflix did it, where the Punisher is fighting Daredevil, and they have this long conversation about, killing people, and the Punisher ties Daredevil to a chimney, puts a gun in his hand, and Daredevil's like, let me go, bye. And Punisher's got a sniper rifle at a villain that they're both going after. It's just that Punisher wants to kill him. And he's like, if you want me to stop killing this guy, you got to kill me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like moral pickles that that's one of the biggest themes in Daredevil is morality and law. And like, to your point is like, for me personally, I'm not like super a religious person, but I don't think that Daredevil approaches faith not preachy, but it shows a person's journey through faith.
Right.
It's a faith based, and people can have faith in whatever they want. You can have faith in yourself and your community, and your partner, and it doesn't matter. It's just for this particular person, there's always a combative attitude that Matt Murdock has to his religion. Even though he has faith, he's like, why is my dad dead? Why am I blind? Why do people like the Kingpin? Like, he believes in law and order, but he also doesn't understand how people like the Kingpin can perverse law,
right,
and be either celebrated or not have anything against them. And I think it's a really wonderful yin and yang, and I think it kind of starts in this story because Kingpin wasn't supposed to be a Daredevil villain; he was a Spider-Man villain,
right?
And he was, I think it was Frank Miller. He went to the Spider-Man writers, and if I'm wrong, someone on the internet will tell me. But he was told, like, hey, I need some more villains in Daredevil because let's be honest, even though I love the '60s Daredevil, Leapfrog, Stiltman, he never really had like the Joker. He never really had the Magneto, the
arch nemesis. Yeah,
the arch nemesis that you can also kind of agree with if you look at their perspective. So they're both born of violence in an urban environment, but they've leaned towards completely opposite directions, and I think that makes a wonderful rivalry because you have to be able to see the perspective of both characters for the rivalry to make sense.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
If you really look at it, what's Kingpin's ultimate goal? It's to control and save Hell's Kitchen. Like, is his method? His methods are questionable and they're not good, but that is what he's trying to do. Him and Matt have a very similar goal, just totally two different characters.
Kingpin is just willing to do everything to achieve it. And as soon as he finds out that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, he uses people that he's bribed in the federal government to shut his bank accounts down. He gets disbarred. His apartment gets blown up. This is all within the first 2 issues of the arc.
Yeah. Just literally puts him through the ringer, man.
Yeah. And also go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, because you brought up the excellent point of the poses kind of in the splash pages. And I actually wrote down, because when I was reading, I was like, I got to bring this up on the podcast. So there are 9 full-page poses in the comic storyline. And if you actually look at all of them in order, it is the perfect, just like, flow of the story. So the first is he's waking up in bed. He's naked. He's like the sheets are on, like he's relaxed. Like it's completely chill. It's a Saturday morning. He's waking up, snowy outside. It's great. The next issue, the next full page splash is he's in a fetal position in a rat infested room.
Right.
In the third episode, in the third comic, the next full page is that he's in a fetal position in an alley.
Right.
So it just continuously is getting worse. And the fourth one is the iconic shot. And this is the shot that I jumped off my chair when I first saw this on the Netflix show. At the end of Defenders, the last shot of Defenders is Mother Maggie waking Matt Murdock up. Yeah. And it's the eagle eye view. Like that's a very iconic shot.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they did that, I literally jumped off my couch and I looked at my friend. I'm like, they're going to do Born Again in season 3.
Yeah.
Because this is where this is from. And then in the 5th issue, the next one is he knocked out the punching bag at Fogwell's gym. So now you're seeing this flow. Like the first 3 issues, the splash pages are down. And then the 4th one, he's kind of, quote, saved, reborn, born again, you could say.
Yeah.
And then he's punching the bag at Fogwell's. And then after that is full page of him holding Karen for the detox. And then the picture that you put behind you in flames.
Yeah. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, that's the rebirth. Like that's the
the rebirth,
blown, like I have taken the absolute worst of what this person can do to me and what this world can do to me. And I've molded through this trauma and all that stuff and a solidified identity of who I am and what I represent. And I think that makes a wonderful story. And it's cool because in that shot that you have behind you, he's looking at Nuke.
Yeah.
Because he kind of throws his baton at Nuke's head, and then it comes back to him, and then that's what you see when you flip the page.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that's tough.
So this is Nuke's perspective. Like, all right, this is the guy. Now we haven't got into Nuke yet, but man, what a like character. Like this guy is like being a weapon of his military. He's basically a super soldier that the military has his brain is jacked, you know. Yeah. And he gets hired by Kingpin to come try to kill Daredevil, basically.
Yeah. Because and funny thing is he's in the MCU.
Yeah.
He is in season 2 of Jessica Jones. I think.
Actually didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and they do the pill thing. So essentially, Nuke is a failed. I mean, depends on your perspective.
Right.
Kind of rebirth quote of Captain America, but instead of getting juiced up, he takes pills.
Yeah.
And there's another theme: addiction, same as Karen Page.
Right.
Like these overarching themes that Frank Miller explores because it's the 80s. Power, excess, drug addiction, the heroin pandemic. Of the 80s in the urban areas, like all this is explored in this story of redemption, and it was what makes it beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is one of the splash pages, or one of the pages here with Maggie holding him. I read something pretty interesting. If you take all of those and you look at some of the other art, it actually the Stations of the Cross from the Catholic faith. I'm not familiar. I'm not Catholic myself. But apparently those were it was very intentional to try to mimic like the Stations of the Cross. And it does tell the whole story of Born Again. And I guess in the one of them, again, I'm not Catholic. So if anyone's listening that is, you could probably educate us better than this. Right. But that's I guess this is like Mary and Jesus.
Oh, I see the cross now. Okay.
Yeah, so
the white part of the white.
Yeah, if I could get it to go. Yeah, it's like a cross. So there's the cross. And then, I don't know. It's how creative. How creative. And for the, how you say his last name again? Our Italian guy, Dave.
Mazzucchelli.
And to bring that into, it's just neat. It's really
cool. Oh, yeah. And there's so many the picture behind you, he's literally born again of fire. Of the things that have been done to him. And I think that's themes that everyone can sort of recognize. Obviously not to the extreme. No one's jumped out of a helicopter with a bazooka trying to kill me. Yeah. But we've all been through trauma and all that stuff, and being born from that, you're a different person. Yeah. And I think from this storyline, Daredevil and Matt Murdock is a different person going forward.
Agreed. So Kingpin gets Nuke into the mix, and Nuke is like crazy. Comes in and just starts freaking destroying. The reason he's trying to Kingpin's destroying Hell's Kitchen is he wants Matt to come out of hiding. So he's like, if I hurt the ones he cares about, he'll show up and he'll fight, and then we can kill him.
Hell's Kitchen, so just attack Hell's Kitchen and he'll show up.
He'll show up, and that's what happens. Nuke is going crazy. He's like napalming Hell's Kitchen. It's just nuts, dude. Killing, shooting, and it talks about shooting actually not just men. It talks about children and women, and so it's very gritty. What happens there? At least it talks about it in the words. One scene that I wanted to bring up, and Dylan, I thought when I read it, for some reason I thought of you, is so after Nuke's like stopped, all of a sudden the Avengers show up. And Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man like show up. And okay, I'm a huge Captain America guy. Like I love Captain America. He's
Same.
Him and Spidey are like some of my top, but Captain America is like my dude. And I don't necessarily care for Captain America in the 40s. Don't get me wrong, that's cool. But the coolest thing about that character is when he's in our timeline and he's trying to like figure out. But there's like a really cool line where it says something like, and this guy's voice with a voice of leadership or something that could command the gods. And he does.
And he does.
He tells Thor, and Thor makes it rain and puts out all the fire. And I thought about you, Dylan, because we've talked about before how like the movies are kind of like what got you into comics, and like the Avengers and Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, those are like the big Marvel properties, like the big three, right? Where like, what was your like take on that as you're reading and all of a sudden the Avengers pop in Daredevil's little burned down neighborhood?
Oh yeah, I thought that was super interesting just seeing them. I wasn't expecting it, but I did think that was really cool. So, and from my understanding, Nuke was like basically the same. He has like the same powers as Cap, I'm assuming, or at least a very like similar, older kind of vibe. So I thought that was really cool. That like, you know, seeing Captain America and Nuke, I didn't really know much about Nuke. I actually didn't watch Jessica Jones. It's the only one that I did not watch of the series. So I didn't know anything really about Nuke before that. But definitely seeing the Avengers kind of come in, I thought that was pretty epic, and just very unexpected, but I thought it was cool for sure.
Yeah, like Cap's on the cover of that comic, and I was like, what's Cap doing here? And the whole time I'm thinking, as Nuke's like going crazy, I love the Punisher and Daredevil's like together. That's like the best for me. So Daredevil season 2, that rooftop scene you're talking about is like the best stuff. So I was kind of hoping, because I had never read Born Again, I was kind of hoping Punisher was going to show up and try to like help Daredevil take out Nuke, because I'm like, who could help Daredevil with this guy? Oh, Punisher, dude. Punisher would go after these two dudes, would have a big battle. But I was really surprised when it was Cap and the Avengers. And there's like this scene where Iron Man's like puts his hand up. He's like, you have 5 seconds to like basically step away from Nuke, like to Daredevil. Yeah. And it says like, I pulled it up here. It says there's a soft hum. The computer circuitry generates enough power to level a building and holds it waiting. Not being stupid, Matt backs away. But that noise, that when it said that, again, this is like coming from a movie to a comic. I heard the noise. That noise is like, I heard that as I read that. I was like, dude. And Daredevil was like, yeah, okay, I'll back down on that. But I really wanted to just kind of touch on Captain America, because there's a scene later where all the survivors are basically gathered in the church. And a Foggy blows right past Matt. Doesn't even know that it's Matt. Just runs right past him to go find Matt's ex-girlfriend, his girlfriend. Yeah, and Matt's going in to check on Karen, and he hears which I think he thinks it's the other guy. I think he thinks it's Nuke, because he says, He says, trouble, if that's who I think it is. Yes, no man ever breathed like that. Back down the alley. There's his scent. He's moving through, his heartbeat steady, 300 pounds. He's talking about this dude, and then he flips up, but it's actually Captain. I mean, at least I thought Nuke was who he was thinking was going to be on that rooftop, but it was Captain America. And Cap is actually like, hey, I just came to ask you, they said that guy's a terrorist, but who is he? Like, who is this guy? And Cap is like, okay, I'm going to uncover this. I'm going to figure out. And he says, I think he's like, he wears the flag, because Daredevil's like, I mean, he's just some crazy nut job that blew up Hell's Kitchen. But he wears the flag. Daredevil's like, yeah, I know it is.
I think he was offended. I think that's one thing. And to your point, that actually happens again. I think it was Civil War in 2010s, where the Punisher wears a Captain America inspired suit.
Yes, he does.
Gets knocked out by Captain America. Yeah. Because it's almost the same thing as Daredevil and Kingpin. There are these characters like Punisher, Bullseye, Nuke, that kind of have this perverse view of being an American.
Yeah.
Because when Nuke is attacking, because let's just say he's not of this planet in his head.
Yeah.
He's just not there. He's addicted to these essentially like what war steroids.
Basically,
is the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that the pills are red, white, and blue.
Yeah. Give me the red one. I need a red. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the red one is like, I'm gonna go and just murder everything that I see. Yeah. And that's why it's called Nuke, because he literally gets where he drops is everything blows up.
Everything is destroyed.
And it's a really interesting that Captain America has this. It's kind of, he didn't care, I don't think, as much until he saw the flag.
Yeah.
And that's one thing in contention that I love, because not only does Daredevil have this world of Hell's Kitchen, in multiple comics he has had a very tumultuous like relationship with the other heroes.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that, and Frank Miller does it really well, and there's other writers and artists who have kind of done this too, where Daredevil does not like the superhero community because he views, in his view, he sees them on the top of the tower.
Yeah.
At where, oh yeah, you'll help this, but you won't help these mobsters. You won't help murderers and rapists and all this stuff. And it's kind of the exact same opinion that like Luke Cage has. And my head is just full of so many just comic little one-liners where the Avengers ask Daredevil to join. He does eventually join, but Luke Cage, there's this wonderful like panel of Daredevil going through the rooftops and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm bringing this is because Captain America asked him to be in the Avengers.
Right.
And Luke Cage says, it's not that Daredevil's not good enough for the Avengers. Is the Avengers good enough for Daredevil?
Yeah.
And Luke Cage says that to Cap, and I was like, oh,
dang,
spitting fire.
Yeah. I like that when Cap confronts Matt Murdock on the rooftop, he's talking to him and he's trying to know about this Nuke guy, and Daredevil's like, why didn't you ask your employers?
Right. Like, he's made from the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm dealing with Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah. And Cap's like, well, they're not my employers. That guy's a terrorist, and Matt's just like, dude, come on. I love that. I love that with the superhero community with Matt and how he feels about that. Civil War, you brought that up. We're definitely going to do a podcast on that because that is the story arc that got me back into comics when I had gotten out of them for a while. And
please invite me.
Yes, we'll put it in the books. We'll get you in. Civil War is absolutely beautiful.
It's my favorite, probably my favorite like story of the entire Marvel universe because it affects everyone.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I just think that they do big events to sell comics.
Yeah, just to do them. The last Civil War was so silly, but that first one was something amazing.
It was amazing. It's a masterpiece, I think. And I was lucky enough to meet the artist. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Steve McNiven.
Yeah.
And I met him at a convention. He signed every single copy of my Civil War books for free.
Dude, amazing.
Because he's like, the cool thing is he's like, oh, it's $5 for an autograph. But if you personalize it, it's free. He wants to stop people from selling on eBay. And I'm like, dude, I'm not selling these. He's like, absolutely, let's do it. And it's really, really nice.
This is literally for me, right?
Yeah, it's all for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So Born Again, awesome story. I really love it. I love the grittiness behind it. I just everything about it, it's a staple. There's a reason it's a staple of the Daredevil universe, and I absolutely back it. I do have a question though, Ryan. You are a Daredevil expert. Like I said, me and Dylan are into it now, but you've definitely got us on all the things. We're gonna go to a quick segment that we call Proton Cannon. This week's Proton Cannon is actually a question, and since we have a Daredevil expert here, I figured I'd bring it up. Ryan, what are exactly Daredevil's physical limits? Watching the movie, he moves like Spider-Man. He'll jump off a building and fall stories and stories down and then whip out his billy club and swing to another building. And it's like, wow, I didn't know he could do that. And then I remember the Netflix series, he's agile. He can jump and flip and do stuff like that, but I didn't see that as much. The comic books, he kind of does. You'll see him run across a rooftop, but the gap might be a few feet and he does a few flips over to that. Right. So the question is, canon wise, what exactly are Daredevil's physical limits?
I would say he has slightly above average, strength, speed, agility, master at hand-to-hand combat, and everything is just aided by his radar sense. Because I think there are instances in the comic where he does fall off a building, uses a billy club to wrap around something because he can sense it. He knows exactly where it is. And there was a really, I think some of the, I'm going to jump 3 stories over a building and stuff. I think it's a little exaggerated for the 2003 movie. But there's an interesting kind of look at his powers when there is a little story arc where he can see. And he says in this panel, my head's just so full of these little blurbs that just like stick in my head. And it says, "I'm the man without fear because I've never been able to see it." There's a scene where he's jumping off of a building. It's funny that you mentioned it. Like he's jumping off of a building to go to another building. And he's like, "This is the first time I've leaped from a building and saw it."
Right.
That it's freaking me out. So he's like, it's actually better that I don't see it. That's what helps me. But I think a little bit of exaggeration when it comes to like the movie, but I think the Netflix show has it. I think that's pretty much where it's at.
Very good.
Sure.
Yeah. So like when he's fighting Nuke, he can't do much damage to Nuke. He's trying. He's kicking, hitting, trying to hit pressure points. He says something like, "Oh, almost broke my fingers," like trying to hit him. Very Frank Miller. Frank Miller loves to say stuff like in inner monologue of like heroes hurting themselves, like, I broke my hand on that punch or whatever, like you hear it in this like rough detective voice in your head. But okay, cool. That clears it up a little bit for me because I was a little confused about that.
There are many themes that Frank Miller goes through. One of my favorites is it's actually in the story. There is almost always a really intelligent sounding crook in a lot of his stories, because I can't remember what the guy's name is in this story, but he's like really intellectual. And he's like, "This firearm that you seem to purchase in your profession does not."
I know that guy.
That's also in Sin City, because Marv, the big dude with all the bandages, that he actually kills 2 mobsters that sound just like that guy.
Right.
And that's a trope that Frank Miller has used many times.
He just brings it back out every time, huh?
Yeah, it's super fun. It's really cool.
Yep. So Dylan, what are your your final thoughts on this Born Again, man? It was you and I. It was our first journey through this together. And so what was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've just kind of been sitting here watching or listening to Ryan talk and just learning a bunch of cool stuff I didn't really know about. So, but I mean, my thoughts as a whole, it was great. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was awesome. I loved seeing the parallels, like I talked about earlier, between this story and all the inspiration that they took for the show. I thought that was really cool. Just seeing all that. I don't know. It was great. I feel like there's not much else I really can say about it. It was just awesome.
I have some nitpicky stuff. This is just for me. Just for me personally. I don't think Karen Page and Kingpin get their comeuppance.
Right.
To be honest. Yeah. And it's like
Karen's 100% off the hook.
It's all her fault.
Yeah, it's this whole thing happened because of Karen Page. And at the end, Matt's like, "You're on drugs. It's okay. Here, let's get off drugs.
Yeah, let's get you better." Which is
I was gonna ask. I wasn't sure if you guys knew or not, but does she ever tell Matt that she's the one that sold him out?
I
don't remember.
I believe so. I think.
Yeah, I think it was like one of the last things. Hold on, I got the.
Missed
right
it.
here.
I wasn't
she
sure.
doesn't tell him how she gets to New York.
No,
I know that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
She gets with a drug dealer essentially, and she offers her services to get a ride to New York.
Home. Yep.
Yeah. Once they get home, she's like, "Okay, we'll see ya," and he's like, "No, I own you now." So that got really awkward.
Yeah, that was Actually, I don't know now that you say it. I felt like there was a scene where she kind of told him, but maybe not.
Oh, I think he does know.
Karen Page. Oh, so when she's detoxing, there's a scene of them. The last piece she sold for a shot of heroin, a lousy fix for the lousy junkie she'd become. The last piece of her Matt, she sold Matt out. The Punisher. I thought that was her talking, but it's not. Nothing, he'd said. Matt, Matt did when she told him what she had done. Oh,
Yeah.
so she did tell him what he did. He just said,
I've
lost. Yeah, she tells him, and she's like, "So what did you lose?" He's like, "Nothing. Nothing happened. I lost nothing." Yeah.
Isn't it just like life? Like you something does something to you, and you're like, "Well, I'm sorry." Like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I just lost.
It says like Karen didn't understand, and then Matt kissed her and he held her. So it's like, that's it. That's all that happens to Karen. Matt just says, "Hey, no big deal. Don't worry about it."
I guess I skipped over it, but I was like confused because I was like, man, she just gets off the hook. So like maybe she didn't tell him. So I was like,
and then the last panel, they're just like walking down the street
Having
together.
a great time.
She's good now. And you're right, Kingpin. What happens to Kingpin from all this?
I mean, he loses his reputation amongst the criminal community, and honestly, the whole Kingpin and crime thing comes out. Like it's kind of weird. Kingpin knows Daredevil's identity.
Yeah.
Destroys him, tries to destroy him, gets really close. But at the end, Daredevil ruins his reputation. He's lost, but he's not in prison. So I think they left him out of prison to keep the story going. I think.
Yeah, agreed.
But he totally dude, you murdered people. Like you blew up a building.
Yeah, and even the government, they pin it on him, the nuke guy, whereas he thought that since it's their agent, like that they would take the fall, but like they even are able to, because of the testimonies, they're able to pin all that stuff that happened to Hell Kitchen on Kingpin being the Kingpin of crime. So it's crazy.
For sure.
It definitely. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's definitely like what? I guess it's a trail. It's like, okay, Frank's like, all right, guys, there you go. I'm giving you something to work with. Like, because keep Kingpin out there. You got to have Kingpin,
Well, yeah, for sure. And I think he pretty much is like, okay, well, U.S., take care of Nuke. That's not my problem anymore. My problem is Hell's Kitchen. Because at the very end, like you said, when he's walking with Karen Page, I think he even says, like, my name is Daredevil. I lost my sight. Hell's Kitchen is my home. And then that's where it ends. So it's almost like a complete like circle all the way around and stuff.
Whereas like Kingpin, issue 2 or 3, Kingpin's on top of the world. He's just joyed with glee of what he's done to Matt. When you get to the end of it, it's totally flipped. Matt's happy walking down the street with Karen, and Kingpin's reputation is ruined. And so.
Oh yeah. One thing I did want to bring this out because the book that I'm reading.
Yep.
So it's just like 3 sentences, but I thought it was really interesting of how Frank Miller came up with this. And so just before he had moved to California to kind of try his hand at doing scripts, because he does eventually write RoboCop 2 and 3. But the move cost more than expected, and he was in debt. And his current projects were many months from completion. He was sitting in a bathtub, broke, 3,000 miles from his home in New York, and he thought to himself, what if this happened to Matt Murdock? What if he lost everything? Shortly afterwards, the then editor, Ralph Macchio, called him saying that Denny O'Neil, the current writer on Daredevil, was no longer going to be on it, and he had left. And Miller told him the idea that he had in the bathtub, and it was settled.
Wow.
That's it.
Just like that.
Being broke. That's it. That's how it started.
That's right, man. That's inspired the story. What if this happened to Matt? Yeah.
Right. And there are certain, I guess I just wanted to also ask, like, your opinions of, like, were there any, minus the full page, because obviously the one behind you and the one of him holding Karen Page, they're iconic. Like, especially with Mother Maggie. Like, I think that's one of the most popular Daredevil pages of all time. Were there any parts of the story that you thought were excellent when it comes to the writing and the art together? Because I have one that I'm just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
It's when Ben Urich is at the news, he's at his desk, he's being yelled at to hit the deadlines. But he's on the phone with an assassin.
Oh yeah.
And there's a cop that has information proving that Kingpin did this to Matt Murdock, destroyed his life. The cop is in a hospital bed, and he calls Ben Urich saying, "Hey, I'm ready to give my testimony. I'm ready to put Kingpin behind bars." But as he's on the phone, the assassin comes in, grabs the phone, and it's one of those. I think the Netflix show kind of. Michael Clark Duncan has it, but it's very much kind of like not hokey, but more flashy, I guess, where it's this really calm, menacing threat. That they look great, sharp dressed, well spoken, very calm, never raises their voice, but they will ruin you.
Yeah.
If you cross them. So I love that theme where the assassin grabs the phone and says, "My employer would like for you to hear this." Put the phone down, and they kill the cop. They choke him. And every panel, that's every other panel, it shows the choking, and then every other panel after that, it's a close up of Ben Urich's face.
Yeah.
And in the very last one, he is beat red while he's still being yelled at to finish his deadlines for the newspaper.
Right. The bosses are still coming down on him.
Right, but they don't know.
They don't know what's going on.
They don't know what's going on, and he's so traumatized. And I think that's one of the, because obviously Kingpin, Daredevil, Karen Page, there's so many characters that have story arcs in this story. I think one of the unsung one is Ben Urich.
Yeah.
Because he really he gets his hand broken. He hears a cop die on the phone. Oh, and after he kills him, the assassin goes, "Thank you for your time," and then hangs up. Like, oh my god.
his wife, they come in his house.
Yeah, they do.
They hang his wife, and he says he repeats it several times, "In my own home."
Yeah, that's the moment I think that broke it, because the entire time after the cop gets killed, for a few issues he disavows the story. He's like, "I'm not doing it. Nope. They've scared me. I've been scared. They came after my wife. Now I'm done." But as it keeps going, and it was one of the most badass panels. Yeah. And it's Ben Urich, because they say the entire comic, the assassin's like, "Don't say Matt Murdock's name.
Yeah, he just
keep it out of your mouth." And I think he gets reprimanded by J. Jonah Jameson, which there's another cameo.
Yeah. And Jameson's actually like, "Hey man, don't be scared. Tell the story. It's what you do."
Right. Oh yeah. Like he's actually on Ben Urich's side. He's like, "No, let's get this Kingpin guy."
Yeah.
And so, after he says, "No, I'm not going to do it. I'm too scared," he walks out of the office, and a janitor goes, "Good job. Make sure you don't say Matt Murdock's name." And I'm like, "Oh, Kingpin's everywhere. He has ears everywhere." And then when he finally has had enough, when the Kingpin finally crossed the line, in his opinion, and attacked his wife in their home, he just looks out and is sitting on a park bench and says, Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Let's do
it. Yeah, man. You ask a great question about like the artwork and like when does you think it matches the story so well. This scene right here for me it's Kingpin talking to Nuke, and the Kingpin has decorated his office with American flags. And as Kingpin is like talking to him, he's holding the American flag. And it's just like a cheesy like politician that being slimy. Kingpin doesn't ever have like all this American stuff all over his office or anything, but he does it to get in Nuke's head to use. So it's like the manipulator that Kingpin is. And it really just kind of reminded me of like American politics with like politicians who will say whatever you want to hear, so you'll vote for them. Kingpin's like really wrapping himself. He says like a part of sorry, like he's getting too emotional.
Yeah, right? I'm such an American.
Yeah, what they've done to our boys, and the guy's like, our boys. Yeah, we gotta save the boys. But so that's where it goes. I thought that was like just a cool way of showing like just how smooth, slick, and manipulative like that Kingpin is. And then I really love the art of the Avengers coming in. Just because when Thor's holding that hammer over his head and the artwork is just like, it felt epic. Like when the Avengers hit the page, even though it's a Daredevil comic and they're only in like a couple panels, it just felt epic. Like, oh, dang, man. Like Thor has all these cool entrances. I don't know if like you've ever looked into that trope, but like in the comics, like they always give Thor these awesome intros. And like there's one when they're fighting the Skrulls. What is that called? Secret Invasion. And he has like the best entrance. He says something about I think it's Nick Fury says something like they're talking about their gods or something, and he brings up, and my God, Nick Fury says, "Yeah, but my God has a hammer." And then out of nowhere, Thor just shows up and like lays waste. But anyway, we'll go into Thor another day. But what about you, Dylan? Any artwork jump off to you?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say the Avengers coming in. I just thought that was pretty cool. Like just their little entrance there was pretty epic. So
yeah, it felt it, right? Like you felt it. Like you felt the weight of the Avengers being the big three were there, right?
Yeah, and I think it is super cool to see that, especially like you brought up the point. I think a lot of Thor's interests is it's mostly silhouettes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the less amount that you see, the more your mind kind of fills in, and it creates an anticipation for them to come. Like it's like a art technique that I think a lot of people use, and a lot of people like look at the Daredevil picture behind you. It can't see his face. You just kind of see the silhouette in there, and that, like you said, the angsty Matt Murdock opinion of other superheroes when it comes to the Avengers. There's one story that comes to mind where. I can't remember. It might be Ed Brubaker's story arc or Bendis, where he beats Kingpin half to death. Mm-hmm. He takes off his mask. There's a crowd of people. It's in the middle of a street.
Right.
And he says, if you idiots can't live in a crime-free city and you need a person like the Kingpin, I'll be the Kingpin.
Dang.
And he dethrones him.
Wow.
Essentially where he gets so brutal that people are afraid. And I bring up that point because one of my favorite little conversations that Matt Murdock has ever had. He grows a beard, like a super badass. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, I think Luke Cage. They have a meeting with Matt Murdock, and Luke Cage is like, hey, so you've eradicated all the crime in Hell's Kitchen, and it's come to Harlem.
Yeah.
Because everyone's afraid of you.
Right.
And then, Doctor Strange is like, I'm in Manhattan. Manhattan crime has gone up. And so on and so forth. And Matt Murdock's like, then do a good job.
Yeah.
And that's it. He's kind of a jerk in a way.
Then quit sucking at your job.
Yes. And it's just really funny. And
that's awesome.
I love that there's a hero. You need those heroes. And I think Luke Cage is probably the other one that does it as well. Mm-hmm. That puts the superheroes in check.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, you're super cool. You can go to distant worlds and all that stuff, but you don't help this family when their house burns down. You don't do this and that. And when Luke Cage was invited into the Avengers, he had a conversation with Cap, and he's like, I'm not going to be a flag. Like, if you want me in the Avengers, we're going to do street level stuff too. And Cap is like, okay, maybe we need a grounded hero.
Yeah.
In the Avengers team.
Yeah.
And I just find that's my favorite avenue of comics for sure. Like the crime noir kind of gritty and stuff. And does any of you like Iron Man? Like him as a character? Yeah, as like a character.
I mean, he's okay. I'm not like super passionate about him or anything.
Yeah, I'm really not either. I think he has a place. But I think one of the coolest things, and you brought up Civil War. Once again, Daredevil probably has some of the coldest lines in comic history. Let's be real.
Absolutely.
Because in Civil War, he gets himself arrested because he's on the anti-registration team.
Yes, absolutely.
He gets himself intentionally arrested, and as he's being taken to his jail cell, Iron Man is with him, going, "Hey, man, people love you. You're one of the most respected people. If you just join our side, you would prevent a lot of people from getting hurt."
Yeah,
essentially. And then one of the security guards is like, he can't talk because there's something in his mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And they open it up and it's silver.
Yeah.
And Daredevil looks at Matt Murdock looks at Tony Stark and goes, you just need a few more, Judas.
Yep. Like, that's exactly what it was. That was probably the first line when I read Civil War that was like, oh my gosh. Like, you just need a few more pieces, Judas. You sold us out.
Yeah, for sure.
Then again, pulling into that Catholic faith, bro. He's ready for it. Everybody knows that story, right? Very cool. Well, Ryan, dude, thank you so much for joining us on the show. This has been an awesome, fun ride going through the Daredevil Born Again. We want to know more about CryptKeeper Podcast, so make sure you guys check that out. So Taking Lives, you guys got any shows coming up? I refer to you guys ever since you and I met as Taking Lives, the band without fear.
Oh yeah. My bass drum, I'm the drummer for Taking Lives, and my bass drum has a TL for Taking Lives, but it's in Daredevil's font.
Yeah.
And my drum kit is red.
That's what sparked our friendship. I saw that and I was like, dude, are you
you were one of the first people that like, that's Daredevil font. I'm like, how did you know that?
Yeah, dude. I was like, that's what started our friendship there. You guys have like any shows coming up or anything? This is going to air on Tuesday. So
let's see. Oh, we do. Our next show is Saturday, June 29th. I'm looking at my notes. Saturday, June 29th at Wrong Side 812 in Jeffersonville, Indiana. If you like heavy music, come out. It's super fun. And if you like horror, if you like we analyze every episode of Tales from the Crypt, along with the comics that inspire them. Check out CryptKeepers Podcast on everywhere you get your podcast.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right, so definitely check that out. I'm going to try to make it to that Taken Live show. Dylan got to witness me doing a little bit of moshing at the Ghost Inside show. I'm old, but every once in a while I'll get out there. So when it comes to support Taken Lives. All right, so join us next time as we move from Hell's Kitchen into a deeper part of New York City. We're going to go deep down in the sewers. In fact, these heroes might even have a closer connection to Daredevil than one might think. Cowabunga, dudes! It's time for Optic Blast Broadcast to jump into the world of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So join us next week for that. Ryan, thank you so much for being a part of the show. It has been a blast talking to you. Dylan, as always, it's good running with you, my friend. That's Optic Blast Broadcast. We're out.